Welcome to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm Sandy Laycox, Editor-in-Chief of Leader's Edge. In this final Personal Lens podcast of the year, our Associate Editor, Chris Hann, talks with Bradley Plummer, Senior Vice President of Employee Benefits at Cottingham Butler. Plummer shares what it's like to have two sons playing Division I college football, how his own father shaped his work ethic, and how he went from an on-campus recruit to a long-time insurance executive. Give it a listen.
We are here with Brad Plummer, Senior Vice President of Employee Benefits at Cottingham and Butler. Brad, thank you very much for taking the time. You are out in Dubuque, Iowa. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
No problem. Thank you, Chris.
I gotta ask you, I asked you to send me some biographical material, and you sent me a great note yesterday. And I guess for me, the thing that jumped out immediately was that you have two sons who are Division I quarterbacks. So I have to ask you that first. How does that happen? What did you feed these kids?
Well, first of all, you asked me for, things that might be odd or strange, and I think that would be one of the odd or strange things, right? So
yeah, I would agree. Impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it's a credit to the boys, frankly. And it is something that, you don't, not necessarily that defines, me as an insurance person or anything like that, but a lot of, my peers in the industry and certainly my coworkers here at CNB, they've all gotten a kick out of following the kids as well. So it's something that in the last handful of years has definitely consumed a lot of our time on the weekends, traveling around the country, going to various games and the like. So you asked me kind of how it happened. It was, so I actually have three boys. My oldest son, he swam and played baseball in high school and whatnot, and then went on and had a fairly normal college life, the University of Arizona. And then the second boy, Jack, he really took a love to, started playing flag football at a pretty young age, and was really fortunate to have had a wonderful set of parents that were running a flag football program down in Gilbert, Arizona, the suburbs of Phoenix, and really got some really great instruction when he was probably 8, 9, 10 years old, and then carried that through into middle school. And his love for the game just kind of kept growing. And he's a real X's and O's junkie. He likes to study the strategy behind the game, and read defenses and understand what's going to happen and know where every single player is supposed to be on the field. And he really, you have to do that and then couple it with the physical part of the game. And they were fortunate. So then little brother Will just kind of followed in his footsteps a little bit. He was a couple years behind him. And they were fortunate to have had really great access to some private instruction down in the Scottsdale, Phoenix area. And, down there you can throw the ball year round. And a lot of ex-NFL folks have retired down there to take an interest in coaching high school football and working with the kids. And so, they got exposed to some really interesting personalities in kind of like middle school and early years in high school. And, I think, iron sharpens iron. You work out with a bunch of great kids, and, they train together. And, the average Saturday over the winters down there, they might have as many as, I think sometimes they even had 8 to 10 Division I quarterbacks working out with the same instructor. So they all kind of made each other better, and kind of rolled from there. So then Jack went on to started his college career at Purdue, and I was at one of the CIAB EBLF meetings when he was right down to the wire on trying to decide where he was going to go to college, and it was a really stressful thing for him as an 18-year-old kid in high school making that decision. And he and I probably talked on the phone, over the 3 or 4 day period that we're at that meeting. We were probably on the phone 20 times with each other, going through the pros and the cons and everything. So that process is kind of a stressful one. But then, for his younger brother, he kind of followed in his footsteps. They both played at the same high school. Jack started there for 3 years, and then when he was finished, Will took over and started there for 2 years. So a lot of fun going back and forth watching their games. And so Will is now at the University of Arizona. He saw a lot of playing time last year. Unfortunately, he got really banged up, and he's been kind of sidelined this year with some injuries. And then Jack just this year transferred from Purdue as a graduate student up to UC Berkeley, where he's been starting this past year. So been kind of a fun journey.
And he's having quite a season, it looks like.
Not bad, not bad. They got some young, talented receivers, but getting the chemistry right when you come in, and you've got a bunch of new players. They've got some kinks to work out yet, but certainly the weather up there is pretty darn wonderful too, right? So
they couldn't have gone to Iowa or Iowa State.
That would have been more convenient. It was convenient when Jack was in the Big Ten. We were able to see some of his games pretty easily from Iowa, where I am. But it's not too bad going to the West Coast either to watch him play. You
told me that you've been working since you were 14 years old, started mowing lawns.
Yeah. Had a job ever since I was 14, and that includes, most of college. I think there was a little period there where I didn't actually have a job in college because my coursework was a little bit too intense. But it literally, the day after I graduated from undergrad at Northwestern, I had to be at my first insurance job, full-time insurance job, at Great American Insurance Company in Cincinnati. We had to report for a training class the next day on a Sunday. We started classes actually on a Sunday afternoon in Cincinnati. So, it's just, I think, one of the things that you asked in the bio or the background, was like, who's your role model or whatever. And, it's easily going to have to be my father. The guy worked his way through middle school, high school, college, medical school, residency, you name it. No one ever paid a penny for any of his tuition, and he educated himself and worked really, really hard. And that was one thing that when I was growing up, I thought, I was fortunate. He was a physician. We were, grew up pretty okay. And I always thought to myself, what in the heck am I going to be able to do if I'm not a doctor? How am I going to do as well as he did in the world? Even given the fact that I was given a pretty good leg up on the whole process. So, taking a page out of his work ethic was definitely something that I took to heart.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, where that came from. You think it came from your dad?
Oh, there's no question. There's no question about it. I mean, to start with absolutely nothing and, build yourself a nice life. And it's really a pretty good American story, right? And so I was fortunate that I got out of undergrad. I didn't have any student debt, which is a huge thing to get out of school these days and not have any debt. That's something right. That, I took as you got to carry that forward, since, he did that for all of us. Of course, it helped having a couple of kids get scholarships. That was also helpful, but so it's that was something that I took to heart, and you just try to keep paying that forward.
Did you think about being a doctor? Was that a career choice that you considered?
It was at one point. I didn't do this the smartest way. Nobody will accuse me of being too smart on this one, but around the end of my junior year of undergrad, I had gotten injured while I was in school, and I had a pretty bad leg injury, and I had to have a lot of surgery on it to repair it and whatnot. There was a young orthopedic surgeon that took care of me. That was really, really a good guy. And it kind of got me thinking, well, maybe this isn't such a bad way to go. And of course, I'd grown up with my father being a physician too. So I got this harebrained idea after, almost completing all of my economics requirements. I decided, well, maybe I should do the pre-med thing. And I jammed the entire pre-med curriculum into my senior year at Northwestern, which I wouldn't recommend that anybody try ever again. It was a fairly miserable year, to be honest with you, but I don't regret it. And when I look back at it, I regretted it a lot at the time, but when I look back at it now, I actually took a lot of things out of those classes that, if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't know some of the stuff that I know about chemistry and physics and the like. So not a total loss, but it didn't pan out for me to get into medical school right away. And so I just kind of kept chugging along in the insurance industry and learning different things.
And how did that, how did that work? How did you end up in the industry? How did you gravitate toward the industry?
I hate to admit it, really. I worked in the summertime in high school for an insurance firm in Des Moines called Kirk Van Orsdale. They were later sold to Marsh. And it was a nice summer job. It was, air conditioned office and all that kind of stuff versus, I'd mow lawns at night and in the evenings and whatnot. But that was just kind of like a bunch of my buddies and I went there because someone's dad worked there and we got good summer jobs. And then when I was graduating from undergrad, because I had done the pre-med curriculum as a senior, I wasn't able to take the MCAT exam until the end of my senior year. So that sets you up for like a gap year before you would enroll in medical school. So one of my fraternity brothers, who was from Ohio, had interviewed on campus with Great American Insurance out of Cincinnati. And, he'd gotten on there and, it was getting towards the end of the year and I hadn't really thought a whole lot about what am I going to do for this year while I'm figuring out the med school stuff. So he encouraged me to go and interview and I got this job at Great American as a trainee for their property and casualty, basically a marketing rep, if you will, but we were marketing reps that had underwriting authority. So I thought, well, I'll try this for a year and move to Cincinnati, live with one of my buddies from college and just see what happens. And it turns out I was in Cincinnati for not even 3 months before they moved me to Nashville, Tennessee, and gave me a territory. So, 22-year-old right out of college, freshly minted, armed me with a Polaroid camera and told me to go call in on my agencies. And I was like, okay, we'll figure this out. It was an interesting learning experience because one of the first things that they sent me out to do with my assigned agency force was I had to go tell them all that we were going to non-renew all their workers' comp insurance. And so that didn't make anybody too happy. And it made them even less happy when we turned around and became the servicing carrier for the state's assigned risk pool. So the clients were all getting non-renewed by Great American, and then they would get a Great American policy in the mail from the assigned risk pool, but 25 to 40% higher than what they were paying before. So that wasn't a real fun way to start your insurance career as a 22-year-old.
You didn't seek another occupation. You stuck with it.
Well, I went through one of the classic cycles. I went down to this office in Nashville, and it got downsized a couple times as they changed their business model, and they kept me on, and I kept. And the other thing, the second fun thing that I got to do was go tell all of the assigned agencies that we were changing their profit sharing and contingent programs, and trust me, they weren't being changed to be more lucrative for them. So, after about a year of doing that in Nashville and just going in from one agency to another and having people be really upset with me, I thought, this is really kind of not that fun. And I ended up moving back to West Des Moines where I grew up, and I spent 5 years working for an excess and surplus lines wholesale broker. And really, it was in my time there. That's where I really had to dig in and learn about insurance and learn insurance contracts and how they work, because we were insuring all kinds of odd things, vacant buildings, special events, high risk stuff, prize indemnification, you name it. So, you always had to start with what's the end in mind and then figure out how do I go build the policy and the contract and the coverage in order to meet it. So had a great mentor when I was in that little company with a gentleman that owned the place, and he was just phenomenal with teaching me the business and how to think about risk and insurance and how the policy matters, and then how claims get handled. I mean, if you don't know how claims get handled, then you're not seeing the whole picture. So
what has kept you in the industry your entire career, right?
Yeah, so I've been with Cottingham and Butler I'll be 24 years in another week or so. And I met Cottingham and Butler through I had transitioned from a role at that small E&S brokerage operation. I actually went to work for AIG out of Chicago, and I was calling on what they called middle market in Iowa and Nebraska. So once I got around the states a couple times, I figured out there were really only a handful of brokers that were going to be a good fit for placing business with AIG. And that's how I met Cottingham and Butler. And I believe it was March 1st of 1998. They had a newly established program for trucking companies that was renewing, and I sat in their office for a few days with various different underwriters, and we underwrote umbrella policies, pollution policies, anything you could, directors and officers when it was a brand new thing, employment practices. I mean, we wrote all kinds of business to help support this program. And I pretty much made my annual sales goal for the entire year on that one day with that one broker. And so that's kind of how I got my relationship formed with C&B. And, later on that year, they reached out to me and, asked me to think about coming up. And I, when I sized it up and I kind of looked at it relative to, I had offers from a couple of other brokers at the same time. And I thought this looked kind of unique because it was still a fairly small company. I don't know exactly what our revenues were at the time, maybe $24 million, something like that. I don't know. But I looked at it and I thought John Butler, our chairman, had put together some interesting pieces. I mean, we had a health claims TPA, a property and casualty TPA, a safety consulting company. They were just getting into group captives and really had a unique business model about how they would seek, to go to the places that a lot of big city brokers didn't like to go. So we had airplanes and we'd fly to little towns that you'd have to look up on a map and think, what am I doing here? But it's been an interesting business model. And, for my time here, it's been, super fascinating in that I've worked on the property and casualty side and I've worked on the benefits side now twice. And I still get to deal with both property and casualty and benefits. And, through our growth in that time, I think we were, as I said, a low $20 million revenue company. When I started running our employee benefits division, we were, seven figures. Now we're 42, 43 million in benefits, and we'll finish this year somewhere, close to $300 million in revenue as a firm. We've grown from, a handful more than 100 people when I joined to, I don't know, 1,150 or something like that today. And it's almost all been organic. We've done a couple of little acquisitions where we brought people into the fold, but really it's been by hiring kids out of college and, growing organically. And it's been a really fun ride, always something different to challenge us. So I really haven't looked over my shoulder since I've been here, because it's always another challenge ahead, and it's been rewarding, and it's been a lot of fun watching the place grow and watch the people grow. And so there really hasn't been a whole reason for me to look anywhere else.
All right, Brad, I've taken up a lot of your time. Anything else that we didn't talk about, that anything I didn't ask you that I should have? Anything you wanted to talk about that we haven't talked about?
One thing is my wish for this industry is for more firms, brokerage firms, brokers, if you will, to get dedicated to trying to bring new, young talent into the industry, hire kids out of college, invest the time and energy into developing an internship program, invest the time and energy into trying to, get a framework to train them. And as an industry, just quit trying to steal everybody else's employees and just move them around the merry-go-round. Let's bring more people into the industry. And I think that there are firms that do a lot, and we do a lot. We have a very large internship program. It's a ton of work. We largely source our people for growth positions from colleges. And it's been a great way for us to grow the business and maintain culture and teach people the way that you want, but it's hard. And I just wish that, more of the industry would get really, really behind it actively.
I hear that from just about everybody I talk to.
Well, good. Maybe they're all starting to think the same thing then.
All right.
All right, Chris.
All right. Brad, I really, really appreciate your time. Good luck with everything. It sounds like you got a lot going on, and good luck to both of your quarterbacks.
I appreciate it.
All right.
That was Bradley Plummer from Cottingham Butler. Thanks for listening. You can listen to our entire Personal Lines series at leadersedge.com.